John Travolta's love life has become a subject of intense fascination among fans and followers. After being married for a long time and raising a family,
to the world, John Travolta's life looked golden. Blockbuster movies, a beautiful family, and a marriage that endured where so many failed. But at 71, he has opened up about a story far more tragic and complicated than anyone imagined. His journey with Kelly Preston began like a movie scene, full of chemistry and hope. But life soon revealed challenges they never could have predicted. For years, Travolta kept certain memories locked away, too painful to revisit. But now, after everything he has survived, he's ready to share the confession that has haunted him the longest. And the truth behind it is leaving fans stunned and emotional. The untold origins of John Travolta. John Travolta is one of those rare Hollywood figures who has managed to leave a mark on every decade he's touched. For some, he'll always be the electrifying young star of the late 1970s. The smooth-talking Danny Zuko from Grease, or the disco-driven Tony Manero from Saturday Night Fever. For others, he's the comeback king of the 1990s, turning heads again with Pulp Fiction, Face Off, and the hit comedy Look Who's Talking. And of course, a whole new generation met him through family favorites like Bolt and Hairspray. No matter where someone first encounters his work, John Travolta has been a fixture in American entertainment for decades. Yet long before the fame, the awards, and even the private jets, he was simply a kid from New Jersey with a dream that felt bigger than the world around him. Travolta's path seemed almost destined. Performing was practically in his DNA. Growing up as the youngest of 6 children, he was surrounded by creativity. His mother, a drama teacher, taught him everything from stage presence to discipline, while he and his siblings turned their basement into a makeshift theater. Day after day, they lip-synced to records, made up plays on the spot, and performed for the same loyal audience, their mom and dad. Those early homegrown shows became the foundation of a career that would one day reach far beyond that basement stage. Knowing exactly what he wanted, Travolta made a bold choice. He dropped out of high school to pursue show business full-time. He later explained that most of his classmates couldn't relate to his ambitions, but his parents could. After watching him perform since childhood, they fully supported his decision. His first real steps into the industry began on stage. In 1972, he appeared in an off-Broadway production called Rain. Not long after, he auditioned for the musical Grease. He didn't get the part, not at first, but he refused to give up, re-auditioned, and eventually earned a role in the show's first touring production. Back then, he played Duty, not Danny Zuko, though he admitted that Danny was the role he dreamed of. It would take a few more years and a jump to the big screen before that dream became reality. Travolta made his official Broadway debut in 1974 with the show Over Here, joining the original cast. Then, just a year later, his life changed again. He transitioned from theater to television, landing the role of Vinnie Barbarino in the hit sitcom Welcome Back, Kotter. Looking back, he described the experience as the start of an entirely new chapter. Even though his mother worried viewers might misunderstand his accent or his portrayal of a laid-back troublemaker, Travolta trusted his instincts and embraced the role, staying with the show for 4 successful seasons. That same year, another major shift happened in his life, one that extended far beyond Hollywood. Travolta became involved with the Church of Scientology. The introduction came through Yvonne Gillam, an Australian woman who had moved to Los Angeles for the purpose of connecting with rising stars. During her visits, she reportedly recorded their conversations for the church, something Travolta didn't know at the time. Despite that unusual beginning, the two became close friends until her death from a brain tumor, one of the first major losses he would face in his personal life. Over the decades that followed, Travolta has remained one of Scientology's most prominent and loyal members. He has spoken openly about the impact it has had on him, often describing it as a source of strength. In an interview with the Tampa Bay Times, he explained that his experiences within the church had guided him through some of the most difficult moments of his life, and that he could not imagine speaking against something he felt had been so supportive. Tragedy. Before stardom hit hard. In 1977, John Travolta, just 23 and on the brink of superstardom, faced a devastating personal loss with the death of his first great love, actress Diana Hyland. Diana passed away from breast cancer at the age of 41, leaving a profound impact on Travolta's young life. The two had met on the set of the made-for-TV movie The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, where, in an unusual twist, Travolta played her son. Diana Hyland was already well known for her roles on the popular series 8 is Enough and the classic soap opera Peyton Place. Despite their noticeable age difference, it made no difference to Travolta. The connection between them was immediate and intense. On set, they were inseparable, talking constantly and sharing a unique bond that quickly turned romantic. Travolta was deeply serious about the relationship, envisioning a future together. Just months after her passing, he reflected on their time together, acknowledging the depth of their love and the joy they had shared in those fleeting months. He even had plans for them to move into a house together, imagining a life that might have led to marriage. The heartbreak was compounded by the speed of Diana's illness. She had undergone a mastectomy 2 years prior, but when cancer returned, it progressed rapidly, leaving her with only 2 weeks to live. Travolta, then filming Saturday Night Fever, rushed home to be by her side during her final days. He later described how deeply intertwined their lives had been, and how he felt her presence long after her death, cherishing the memory of the joy they brought to each other. The following year, Travolta's career took another leap forward with the iconic role of Danny Zuko in Grease. While he had already started rising to fame, Grease catapulted him into the stratosphere. The film became a massive hit, grossing over $394 million and cementing his status as a household name. Decades later, fans still celebrate both the movie and Travolta's unforgettable performance. However, the 1980s brought challenges for Travolta. The decade was marked by professional struggles, and he even recalled being told that his career was over. Yet, he refused to fade quietly. His comeback began with the comedy Look Who's Talking in 1989, but it was the 1990s that truly reignited his stardom. Films like Get Shorty, the action thriller Face Off, the political drama Primary Colors, and the cult classic Pulp Fiction restored him to Hollywood royalty. Colleagues recognized his unique place in the industry, with some describing him as one of the last stars from the golden age of Hollywood, a modern-day icon whose career defied the ups and downs of fame. Inside John Travolta's hidden affairs. Now, over the years, a handful of men have stepped forward, claiming they'd had intimate encounters with Hollywood icon John Travolta. But whenever this topic comes up, one name surfaces more than any other: Doug Guterba, a former pilot who says he shared a 6-year romantic relationship with Travolta throughout the 1980s. Travolta's camp has always pushed back, calling these stories pure fiction. But Doug's version has a certain texture to it, full of oddly specific details that are hard to ignore. And those details line up with accounts from several other men who've made similar claims. According to Doug, everything began back in 1981. Travolta was looking for a new pilot, and Doug was one of the candidates up for the job. He says their first meeting was strictly business, an interview in February of '81, yet by the fall of that same year, the relationship had quietly evolved into something personal. Doug even remembers their first date, a trip to California where they shared wine over dinner at the Hyatt Carmel Highlands. After dinner, Travolta supposedly invited Doug up to his room for a massage, and Doug claims things took a turn almost immediately. For 6 years, Doug says the relationship continued behind closed doors. But with that secrecy came tension. Travolta, determined to keep both his and certain obsessive tendencies private, allegedly struggled with the idea that Doug might be cheating. According to Doug, things got so intense that Travolta even showed up at his house, went through his belongings, and took items without permission, apparently searching for evidence of infidelity. What had once felt like a whirlwind romance was now carrying a darker edge. Still, during those years, the two men supposedly traveled the world together, slipping away to places like Kenya, Amsterdam, and Hawaii. Travolta reportedly went to great lengths to avoid suspicion, even bringing a woman along on these trips so the public would assume he was traveling with a girlfriend. Doug would then quietly slip into Travolta's room once the door closed and the lights dimmed. At first, Doug says he didn't mind being part of the secret. In fact, he claims he even suggested Travolta pursue a public relationship with actress Brooke Shields to help create a perfect cover story. According to him, Travolta and Shields had no romantic chemistry whatsoever, which only reinforced the idea that the pairing was more performance than passion. But as the months rolled into years, the constant need for secrecy began to wear Doug down. Combined with what he describes as Travolta's growing obsessiveness, Doug eventually chose to walk away. Even after the breakup, their paths allegedly crossed one last time. Doug says he ran into Travolta by chance around 1992 after the actor had married Kelly Preston. He claims he asked Travolta outright whether he was still involved with men during his marriage. An uncomfortable question met with an answer he says confirmed it. Doug quietly shared this story with people for years before finally going public in the 2010 S. And once he stepped forward, the ripple effect was immediate. You see, before Doug Gotterba ever came forward with his story about a supposed 6-year romance with John Travolta, the actor was already facing some uncomfortable headlines. 2 anonymous male masseuses had accused Travolta of inappropriate behavior during massage sessions. But the first of those men eventually retracted his claim after Travolta provided a clear alibi, showing he couldn't have been at the location where the incident was said to have happened. So when Doug later stepped into the spotlight with his own allegations, Travolta's team quickly reminded the public about that earlier accusation, the one that fell apart under scrutiny. From their point of view, these repeated claims weren't just coincidences. They believed there was a long-running effort to portray Travolta as secretly gay when, according to them, he had always been straight. That storyline really begins with the first person who publicly accused Travolta of hiding, a former porn star named Paul Baresi. Back in 1990, Paul claimed he and Travolta had carried on a secret relationship for 2 years, from 1983 to 1985. If his timeline were true, it would mean Travolta was actually cheating on Doug Gotterba during the very period when he was allegedly accusing Doug of being unfaithful. A serious contradiction that would paint the actor as deeply hypocritical. Paul's version of events started in a dramatic fashion. He said he met Travolta at a gay bathhouse where the actor approached him, possibly recognizing him from his adult film work. According to Paul, they ended up having dozens of times that night, and what began as a wild encounter unfolded into a 2-year relationship. But, like the other stories tied to Travolta, Paul said the situation eventually soured. He described the actor becoming increasingly obsessive, echoing elements later heard in Doug Gotterba's account. About 10 years after Paul first told his story, his credibility took a major hit. It surfaced that he had done questionable investigative work for a prominent celebrity attorney. That revelation made many people assume he'd fabricated his entire story about Travolta. Public pressure mounted, and Paul officially retracted the allegations, saying he just wanted the backlash to stop. But later, he reversed himself again, insisting that his original story was true and that he had only withdrawn it because he felt cornered. Even with that reversal, the damage was done. The retraction had already weakened Paul Baresi's reputation, and Travolta's team repeatedly pointed to him as an example of someone willing to manufacture claims in an effort to label the actor as gay. But as the years went on, the allegations didn't stop there. In 2012, the pressure around John Travolta was building fast. By that point, 7 men had already come forward with accusations of misconduct or assault, and the list wasn't slowing down. In fact, it was growing. 2 more men stepped up with new claims, each describing separate encounters at upscale hotels. These 2 latest accusers, one from Seattle, the other from Miami, had both reached out to attorney Okori Okorocha. That name was already making headlines because he initially represented the first 2 men who accused Travolta before they switched over to Gloria Allred. According to reporting from the New York Daily News, Okorocha was now speaking with even more men who said they had their own stories. The Miami accuser, Jeff, was a masseur working at the high-end Eden Rock Resort in Miami Beach. The Seattle accuser was a 48-year-old former hotel worker from the Westin Hotel in Seattle. Jeff openly explained why he decided to speak now. He said he regretted staying silent for so long, especially after seeing how many others had come forward. Jeff described his session with Travolta as something that started out routine but quickly took a turn. He said Travolta guided his hands to certain areas and began grinding against the table. At one point, Jeff said Travolta pulled his hand between his legs, all the way up to the scrotum. According to Jeff, when he initially rejected the advances, Travolta apologized. Jeff continued the session, but things escalated again. As he worked on Travolta's other leg, he said the actor lifted his hips and became more aggressive. Jeff tried to shift the energy and keep things professional, but Travolta allegedly grabbed his hand again. By the end of the session, Jeff said Travolta began masturbating and assured him that no one would ever find out. What made Jeff's account stand out was how closely it matched the claims from the Seattle accuser, as well as several earlier allegations. Radar Online reporting mentioned that other accusers included 3 masseurs, a former cruise ship worker, and a gym employee. The Seattle accuser claimed the actor approached from behind, grabbed him, and exposed himself. When the man rejected him, Travolta allegedly offered him $100 for sex, an offer that was turned down. Travolta's legal team, however, pushed back firmly. His attorney publicly denied all accusations, calling every claim ridiculous and completely false. But the controversy didn't stop there. In 2017, a police report from February 2000 resurfaced, revealing a complaint filed against Travolta by a 21-year-old male spa employee. Travolta had scheduled a deep tissue massage at the La Quinta Hotel in Palm Springs shortly after midnight, and the employee claimed a series of inappropriate actions took place during that session. He alleged that Travolta repeatedly removed his towel, exposing his buttocks, invited him into the steam room, made comments about his appearance, and expressed excitement. He also claimed Travolta touched him intimately while lying face down and made several explicit remarks. Police concluded that the situation did not meet the legal threshold for battery, so the case was dropped and no investigation continued. Around that same period, a second spa employee, who remained anonymous, reported a similar late-night encounter. But this accusation ran into a major problem. Travolta had an airtight alibi, proving he was in a completely different city on the night in question. The accuser tried to adjust the timeline, claiming there was confusion about the dates. A new legal team stepped in, insisting they had documentation and witnesses backing the allegations. Even so, The case never moved forward again, and law enforcement did not reopen it. With multiple men accusing John Travolta of inappropriate behavior and questioning his public relations team was constantly on the defensive. But beyond the long list of rumors, there was another layer that kept coming up, one from someone who knew him better than most. His late friend and Hollywood icon, Carrie Fisher, often said that Travolta's was an open secret in the industry. According to her, most women in Hollywood already suspected he was gay, and none of them seemed to mind. What remains unclear is how her repeated public comments may have affected the friendship they were known for. That part of the story still sits in a gray area. While Hollywood's women may not have cared about the rumors, the Church of Scientology was a different story altogether. Former high-ranking member Mike Rinder, who knew both Travolta and his wife, Kelly Preston, spoke openly about the pressure within the church. He refused to speculate about Travolta's, but he made one thing very clear. If a Scientologist were to come out as gay, it would be catastrophic. According to him, the church was deeply anti-gay, even if it didn't advertise those beliefs. Rinder also said that Kelly Preston was far more devoted to Scientology than Travolta ever was. Another former executive, Karen de la Carriere, backed that up, describing Preston as a true believer, someone either unaware of or indifferent to her husband's alleged activities. She framed Travolta as a man who sought out risky experiences, a description that lined up with the many scandals that had built up over the years. At 71, John Travolta's heartbreaking confession brings fans to tears. John Travolta first met actress Kelly Preston back in 1987 on the set of the movie The Experts. Even though they clicked instantly, it took a few more years before they made things official. By 1991, after dating and growing closer, they were ready to take that next big step. They didn't just settle for a typical ceremony either. The couple flew all the way to France, where a Scientologist minister officiated their wedding. But in true Hollywood fashion, there was a twist waiting for them once they returned home. They discovered that their romantic French ceremony wasn't legally recognized, so they had to get remarried in the United States to make everything official. In an industry where relationships flare up fast and burn out even faster, Travolta and Preston's bond was a refreshing surprise. Both were already major stars, yet their connection only grew stronger with time. They stayed married for an impressive 28 years, building a life that was filled with love, stability, and genuine devotion. During their nearly 3 decades together, the couple welcomed 3 children. Their first son, Jet, was born in 1992. Ella Bleu arrived in 2000, followed by their youngest, Benjamin, in 2010. But behind the scenes, Jet's health struggles weighed heavily on the family. He lived with autism and had battled Kawasaki disease as a baby, all while dealing with recurring seizures that shaped much of his young life. In January 2009, the family decided to take a much-needed vacation to their home in the Bahamas. It was meant to be a peaceful escape, the kind of trip where memories are made and troubles feel far away. Instead, the Travoltas found themselves facing a nightmare they couldn't have imagined. While at the home, Jet suffered a severe seizure. He fell, hit his head on the bathtub, and was later pronounced dead. It was a loss that shattered the family. As if the grief wasn't enough, the couple soon faced something even more painful: betrayal. Several individuals they once considered friends tried to use Jet's death to extort money from them. CBS News later revealed that it was during this extortion case that Travolta publicly acknowledged Jet's autism for the first time. 2 men were accused of demanding $25 million by threatening to release what they called private information about the rescue efforts. According to ABC News, Travolta testified that a Bahamian medic had even threatened to claim the actor was responsible for his son's death. The case was eventually dismissed because Travolta could not bear to go through the ordeal of testifying again. Kelly Preston later opened up about Jet's diagnosis during an appearance on The Doctors, as reported by Us Weekly. She shared her belief that a combination of factors contributed to his autism, including food poisoning during her pregnancy, a difficult labor, breastfeeding while on antibiotics, thrush, and his battle with Kawasaki disease as a baby. Meanwhile, medical experts at the Mayo Clinic maintain that autism is thought to be largely genetic, with researchers still studying the impact of environmental influences. While the family tried to navigate their private grief, the media turned their loss into a frenzy. Headlines questioned why Travolta had not spoken openly about his son's autism earlier. Some even hinted at blame. A decade after the tragedy, the Daily Mail published a bizarre report claiming that Travolta had performed a Scientology ritual, known as a Bring Back to Life Assist, in an attempt to revive Jet in the ambulance. The allegation came from a former Scientologist who described the ritual as an attempt to call a person's spirit back into the body. Travolta later admitted that the press coverage surrounding his son's death was, to him, the most offensive chapter of his career. In an interview with the Daily Beast, he said it hit him harder than any scandal ever could. He drew a line in the sand, saying stories about his personal life were one thing, but speculation about his family crossed a boundary. He described that period as the lowest he had ever felt. The trauma of losing his son took a heavy toll. In a BBC on-stage interview, Travolta revealed that he fell into a deep depression afterward, so deep that he even considered walking away from acting entirely. He said he no longer found life interesting and wasn't sure he would make it through that stretch of time. He credited the Church of Scientology for helping him climb out of that darkness, explaining that they supported him every day and guided him through their methods for coping with grief. Through all of that heartbreak and public scrutiny, one thing remained unshaken: the bond between John Travolta and Kelly Preston. They leaned on one another, finding strength in their marriage as they grieved, healed, and continued building a life together, despite the unimaginable pain they had endured. Just 16 months after the unimaginable loss of their son, the Travolta family shared news that truly shocked everyone around them. They were expecting another child. Kelly Preston discovered she was pregnant at 47 years old, and the surprise felt almost unreal. When their son Benjamin arrived in 2011, it brought a new kind of light into their home. John Travolta and Kelly often spoke about how they saw this new baby as a blessing, almost like life had given them a renewed sense of purpose after so much heartbreak. But in 2018, their marriage was hit with its most difficult challenge yet. Kelly Preston was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 55. While many people survive breast cancer, the journey is long, exhausting, and unpredictable. For Kelly and John, even if she could fight her way through it, they knew the process would be painful and demanding, in ways only they could fully understand. The family made a decision early on to keep her diagnosis private. They could have expected tremendous public support, but some struggles feel too personal to share with millions of strangers. They chose privacy over publicity, wanting to protect Kelly's dignity and shield their family from the intrusive glare of the tabloids. Kelly received treatment at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, one of the best in the world. She battled bravely for 2 years, but even with expert care and the support of loved ones, she eventually lost the fight. She passed away at home in Anthony, Florida on July 12, 2020, surrounded by family and friends. The Travolta children were devastated. When the time came to share the news with the public, they did so through social media, and a family representative stepped forward to ask that their privacy be respected as they mourn. After several quiet months, John Travolta finally found the strength to thank fans for their support. But grief like his isn't something that fades quickly. Losing a spouse leaves a mark that lasts a lifetime. In an interview with Esquire Spain, he reflected on the nature of mourning. He spoke about how grieving is deeply personal and how each person's path through loss is their own. He explained that understanding this has helped him slowly move toward healing. Later, in a conversation with Kevin Hart on Heart to Heart, John opened up about one of the most difficult parts of the aftermath, talking to his youngest son, Benjamin. Benjamin was around 10 years old when his mother died, and he became terrified that he might lose his father too. John gently explained the differences between their situations, reassuring his son about his own health and longevity. He also admitted that looking at the world through Benjamin's eyes helped him confront his own fears about aging and mortality. It reminded him that sometimes perspective is everything. When he understood that, he found a little more peace amid the grief.